So my guest today is Georgie Holbrook. And before we dive into our conversation about healing rosacea completely, I'm going to read you Georgie's bio. So Georgie has made it her mission to teach others how to heal their hidden traumas and learn prevention so that they can start living a life they are passionate about without fear of old patterns returning. She has the unique ability to uncover the emotions behind health issues and poor self-esteem in others. Once the sacred language is addressed, spoken to, and sung to, healing can begin. Georgie is a sacred sound specialist, emotional wellness mentor, spiritual guide, holistic educator, and author of 4 self-help books. And she's held a private practice for over 20 years. And today we're going to dive into a couple of the books that you have written specifically on your journey healing rosacea. So welcome to the Journey to Glow podcast.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So as I shared, I'm looking at your website right now, and the 3 books featured. Someone from the Journey to Glow community sent me a link to your book, Joyful.
Nice.
Holistic Remedies, How to Experience Your Natural Ability to Heal. And I'm just going to say this right now on the podcast. You also have follow-up books, the Rosacea Acne Natural Remedy and the Autoimmune Acne and Rosacea Natural Healing, How Smart Emotions precisely targets life's issues and why. So I just wanted to say that right off the top of our interview, the books are going to be linked in the show notes under this video. We're actually recording this video, which is unusual because usually it's only audio, but I wanted everybody to see Georgie and how radiant
thank you.
You are.
Thank you. What a blessing you are.
And so in the book, people will see the photos of your skin, and we're also going to link in the blog post with your interview photos of your skin. Was it at its worst, the photo that you print in your book, the worst stage of rosacea?
That was at the worst, but it was also, up until then, I didn't want my picture taken. I just felt so horrible and ugly, and so when those pictures were taken, it was at my worst.
So why did you take a photo at that moment?
That actually was a doctor that took my pictures for his own, and then I had other ones taken too. But at that moment, I really didn't know that I would ever heal.
It's amazing that you did take that photo and that you still have that photo, because I really want people to see it. First of all, I want people to see the before and after. So your skin, you called it, or you're still calling it, deformed rosacea?
At that moment, my face definitely was deforming.
Yeah. So yeah, I was sharing with you. Thank you for sending me your photos, and thank you for generously and openly printing it in your book. And again, it's going to be on the blog post.
Right.
For people to see. And the reason why it's so important to me is that seeing you now on video with your skin completely clear, it's just undeniable. So if people are listening on the podcast, I'm going to direct them to watch the video that we're shooting right now if they want to, again, just to see. And I really want to reinforce why this has been so important. And mainly, I shared with you last time we spoke that there's a big movement of holistic healing that I'm part of and that I want to lead with Journey to Glow. But in that movement, there's, I think that there's more space to speak more confidently on the possibility of true and complete healing.
Right.
And then there's another movement, which is all about censoring anything that has to do with natural healing and, skin transformations from the inside out. And And then there's the wider, broader accepted medical message that we don't know the root cause, we don't know how to take care of this, rosacea is incurable.
Right.
Which I firmly stand against. That
Right. It's like standing up to God and saying, no, 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 you don't understand. This is incurable. You know, it's like
right. And
it's
so
going against a natural principle.
tell me more.
Well, I prepared myself to share some principles that really go in alignment with what you're talking about, so that people can understand the bigger picture. So our face, when we go to the dermatologist, is like an isolated location, right? So in our society, we go to the knee doctor, the hip doctor, the emotional doctor, the eye doctor, but we don't look at the whole picture. We don't look at the lifestyle. So in the holistic field, we look at all of it.
Yeah.
So if it's okay with you, I'll kind of review some of the things that I've learned, because I think they're really important at looking at the bigger picture.
Okay, actually, hold that thought.
Okay.
I want to go back. I want to start at the beginning, because people who haven't read your book, they don't know the story. So let's start at the beginning, and let's start at the beginning of what I call your journey to glow. What was happening in your life when rosacea started to happen? Give us the lowdown, because women really appreciate hearing other women's journeys.
If it's okay with you, I wanted to bridge the principles just quickly.
Okay.
Three of them, and then move right into my story so that they can see the principle worked out in my story.
Go ahead.
All right. So the immune system works basically the same for all of us, with few exceptions. I mean, if you lost a foot, right, that's different. And the body works on natural principles that anybody can prove they're as accurate as gravity, but we have not been taught about our own body. And the body isn't as complicated. This is the good news. The body isn't as complicated as others have taught us to believe. And we're taught in our society, especially as women, to neglect ourselves, devalue ourselves, work over the top of exhaustion. And our body, as our friend, keeps score, because it's a natural principle, and it will tell our story in health issues. So I have a saying, you can cut out an organ, but you can't cut out, Carolyn, the emotions that caused it to shut down. So anyway, I have a saying that emotions manifest in mild to extreme health issues as a language, just like what you read in my bio there. Not to be feared, but to be understood, healed, and reversed. So 80% of most health issues, including the skin, is emotional. So they're estimating that 90% of all health issues are stress related. Well, of course, stress and emotions go together. So look there for answers. So my story, at age 25, I was a vice president for a corporation that I helped grow into 5 different states. Most days I worked 10, 12 hours a day. That was just easy. 7 days a week, many times. I had everything money could buy, new cars, clothes, but at age 36, up until that point, Carolyn, I hardly ever got sick. And if I got sick in the corporate world, I just worked right over the top of it in most cases. But at age 36, things changed. I got allergies, really bad allergies. So I did exactly, what other people do. I went to the allergy doctor and I took allergy shots for 3 times a week for 5 months. And at the end of 5 months, my allergies went away, but my face turned red. And I'm going to kind of fast forward this. So it went red, then acne. So I'm at 36, right? And makeup isn't covering it up. And then soon after that, I broke out in boils. So here I am in my dress suit, my high heels, and makeup isn't covering it up, and I can't hide it, right? So I go to my first skin cancer doctor, not thinking that I had cancer, but I knew that I needed a quick fix. This is the way we think, right? In the corporate world, I just want a quick fix. So I go to the skin cancer doctor, and he says that I've got rosacea, and it's incurable. And just like we said at the front end, I had never heard in the corporate world incurable, because I wouldn't have had a job if I couldn't solve the things that were around me. And so I was like incurable. So I did exactly, so he wanted me on medication. So I did what most people would do. I went and got other opinions, but each doctor wanted me on their regimen of medication. But in all honesty, I knew that medication was not what I was lacking. But in that moment, I didn't know what I was lacking, right? Here's this stuff on my face, and you know, it's stopping me in life, right? So I decided that I was out of control. And in those moments, you know, when you get diagnosed, whatever the diagnosis is, if you don't understand your own immune system, it's really a helpless situation. So I decided that I was going to go on a mission and never put myself in this helpless position again. And that I would understand the immune system. And if my body ever broke down again, I would know how to solve it and reverse it. So in 6 years, I went to 6 to 8 specialists a year, far more holistic people. But I asked them this question, which is kind of, to me, still today makes sense. If I have a healthy cell today and I have a disease cell tomorrow, why can't it reverse? Well, if all of us scratched our arm today, it heals, right? So why is the face any different, or any other part of the body? I couldn't find those answers. And of course, the doctors just wanted to medicate me. So at age 42, my face was deforming. And so no matter what diet I went on, no matter how many fasts I went on, one time I went on a fast for 14 days, hoping that it would affect my face, and it didn't budge anything. But by age 42, I was losing a major part of my eyesight. I couldn't read or drive. So if I backed up, my way wasn't working, but I didn't know at that point what would work, as I felt very, very isolated in my journey. So somewhere between the 6th year and the 7th year, I met this doctor that had studied the immune system. So most doctors study medication and how to cut it out, and surgery, and go that route. But he wanted to understand the immune system. I had 1 hour with him, Carolyn, 1 hour. And he looked through my file and he looked at my face, and he said, stop going to doctors. They're just putting more fear in you. And I don't know if you'll ever heal, but you have to find peace within. Well, peace within sounds simple, doesn't it? But peace within was really foreign to me. It was like, I don't know when the last time I had ever had peace within. So I left his office, and he also figured out that I had an internalized quiver. And he said, people don't heal with an internalized quiver. So what had happened is that I had put enough trauma on my body that my 12 organ systems were out of harmony with nature. So we're always wanting to come back into nature. So from that doctor, I went in and found, actually it was a kind of a corporate group of 80 people that were dealing with letting go of fear and being empowered. We've heard of those workshops, right? So this was a week-long workshop, but in front of 80 people. And by that time, I was so fragile that I didn't know if I could have 80 people looking at me. It was just like, I don't know where my breaking point is, but I knew I was very close. And this is exciting to me today because it's still part of the solution. They had us that first night make a list of likes and dislikes. And so I wrote and I wrote and I wrote, but I didn't have anything on my like list. My life at that time was just absorbed with having this disease and trying to solve it, so desperately trying to solve it. So I'm going to read to you some of the things. I've got it up on my screen here, some of my dislikes, because I know people out there with skin issues, you're going through the same thing. I was on a very boring diet. I juiced, and I was just so rigid on being on the right diet. So now I have a joke. I said, sometimes you can think you're doing something right, but you could be deadly right? Just like go to the extreme, right? So I felt lifeless, was on my list, and I was broke. All the money I had in the corporate world got spent on the holistic route that I was taking, my journey, because insurance would have covered, of course, the medical route, and I wasn't going that route. So now I don't have money, and this is after being at 25, I'm a vice president, and now I'm 42, and this desperate person, right, that I'm telling about. So I did not, this also is an important point. I didn't have one friend I could share my story with that I felt safe enough. And that's part of, so here's what I see people do. They wanted to give me advice. So as far as being safe to share my story, they'd either interrupt me and say, oh yeah, I had something similar to that, or they want to give you advice. So there's nobody that you can just be, can you just listen to me? Can you just listen to my soul talk about what it's like to lance boils every day? But nobody was sharing that. I couldn't cry, hadn't cried for years. And in the corporate world, I was what I call pretty arrogant. I'd say, you know, if I cry once every 7 years, it's just once too often. But that was my training, you know, really rigid and strict. And now I can cry spontaneously. And then I had that internalized quiver around the clock that was really devastating. And then I pretended to act strong. Did you ever try to act strong around the clock? And no matter who comes at you with advice or questioning, some people thought I had been in a fire. And you just act strong. You just get kind of numb to the whole world around you. Now, interesting that I want your listeners to really understand that when you have this much trauma, that my mind and my mouth couldn't function. So if Carolyn asked me a spontaneous question, I couldn't get my mouth to function with my brain. And so I would just stare at you. And then I would go home and I would be in hysterics. I would just be, what's happening to my mind? What else can I do? I'm losing my mind. I can't function, right? So trauma, I had been traumatized not only from my work addiction in the corporate world and treating myself like a machine, but now I was suffering from this rosacea that added more internalized trauma. And it was accumulating. So what I find is that the trauma for any of us, if we don't understand it, it accumulates in the body memory. And I believe in talk therapy, but we can talk about it, Carolyn, from now until forever, and it's not going to budge it. So accumulated trauma is very unnatural for the body. And thank goodness that that I came to this conclusion. So most of my life, I did work I didn't enjoy, which is another principle, you know, living your passion rather than pain of doing things that you don't enjoy. But I assumed from my growing up, that's all I saw my parents do was work. And I assumed that everybody just worked for money and that was life. And it's not life and it's not natural. So also my greatest efforts of trying to solve this were leaving me getting worse, right? So how does that feel in the human body? And there was no safe place for me to be where I wasn't questioning like every day, even going in a grocery store, sometimes just really small little innocent children would scream because I really did look ugly and I really did look like the monster they saw on TV last night.
How traumatizing. You turned a corner with your shopping cart and this kid yells hysterically at you.
Yeah, you know, and you know they're innocent, but it's So at this time in life, I was married to a fundamental church minister. We had 2 churches, and I never could get their beliefs to work for me. So we could use that same principle if it's a doctor, right? That he or she's trying to convince me of something, but it's like, I can't get it to work. I can't figure out what you're telling me. But in the church system, I couldn't get their beliefs to work for me, nor did I really witness them living what they claimed to believe. But at that point in my sadness and suffering, I thought it was something wrong with me. And see, when we come back and we really own and fall in love with ourselves, we will know the difference when somebody's putting us down, or that if something's not working. So some of the church people quoted me many different scriptures about, if I had enough faith and if I was walking with Jesus, I would be healed. That didn't work. But another thing happened. The church elders baptized me 3 times over this period of time because they thought I had been cursed. And we hear that language out there, right? And so imagine, Carolyn, coming out of the water, just praying that now I want to be healed and having the same face, right? And so it added to my internalized pain. It was like, they know something that I don't, but I'm just not figuring it out. And then, of course, doctors shamed me. We had some doctors in the church that shamed me for going the natural route, because as they looked at me, I wasn't getting any better. So medication definitely was not what I was asking. But here's the cool thing. So I've got this list. I'm in with 80 people. And I take my list. This is the first night in this workshop. I take my list and I go in the bathroom. And I'm in this commercial bathroom all by myself. And I look in the mirror, Carolyn. And I've got this list. And I say, all right, I can take my dislike list one at a time. Now, I want the audience to notice how many dislikes they have in their life that they say, oh, Carolyn, it's not that bad, right? We're in a situation where that's not that bad. But I knew I was fragile and that my life was on this edge. So I go in the bathroom, I'm looking at my face and I'm looking at my list. And I said, I can do away with the dislikes one at a time, that there is no time to do that. I've already wasted enough time. But I'm going to do away with my list to the best of my ability tonight. So I'm making this commitment, this gut-wrenching commitment. And what happened was the fever that I had always in my face always burned. In that moment of making that commitment to do away with my dislike list, the fever in my face left. And I was like, oh, so 2 things happened. That internalized quiver that I had 24 hours a day just calmed down. So I had these 2 major shifts just from taking a look at committing to myself that I don't know how to find joy. I don't know how to find peace within, but I am willing to learn. So the key here that I think is that the dislike list was actually holding the disease in place. And the good news is I stayed with that group for 9 months studying, and I healed within a year. It actually was more like 9 months, but I say in my books a year. But my eyesight came back, and this group helped me eventually tell my story because I was too paralyzed at the front end. And when my eyesight came back is when I dedicated my life to share my story, because we're living this and not understanding our own bodies and our own emotions, and that our intuition's 100% accurate. And I feel that all of this could have been prevented, but my books have went around the world, Carolyn, many times, and I've helped a lot of people. But it took me 10 years after that to heal from the trauma, the accumulated trauma in my body. So it's been a journey. And what I'd like to share with your people is that how committed are you to removing all the ways you label yourself with skin issues? Not pretty enough, ashamed of your looks, cursing your pimples or whatever you're working on. I mean, we have this mentality, especially with magazines and whatever, that we as women have to have the most beautiful skin, right? And when it doesn't happen, then we start internally cursing ourselves, like our face let us down. But what we curse will curse us in return. It changes all our chemistry. So it would be like cursing a little child. You can take the sparkle out of their eyes, right?
Yeah.
So can I love my face regardless of how it shows up? And here's some emotional questions that I'd like to ask your people. So the face also has an emotion. If my face could talk, maybe you want to write that down. If my face could talk, what would my face tell me? What am I not facing? And who am I not facing? So this was my situation. Who am I not facing? And it's usually someone really close to you when it's the emotion behind any body part. So for me, it was my husband. And many times I couldn't ever do anything right around him. I couldn't say it right, do it right. He would continually look at my face and say, oh, I think it's really getting worse. And I think your nose is really enlarging. And how, what kind of cheerleader is that to have around you, right? So I ended up divorcing him. But I want you to ask yourself, what can I add to my daily routine that would help my face heal? And if 80% of my skin issues is emotional, then can I stop obsessing about my face and look and stop looking at external answers and take it inward? Am I at peace within? Am I happy? And see your face as part of the whole picture, your lifestyle. And so we must heal our inner child and the internalized trauma. So self-help, self-talk rather, if you can praise yourself and have gratitude in your life for the 99% of your body that's working well, rather than the 1% that we just keep picking on, that needs to change. So not complaining and condemning, because we wouldn't do that to a little child. So why do we do it on ourselves, right? To learn how to love yourself and to really nurture yourself well. And I know what Carolyn's teaching is just so amazing, because I've done a lot of different radio shows and podcasts, but to find somebody that's into natural healing just really warms my heart. I want to tell you about my new life just for a moment. I write music, I play my guitar, I sing in front of public, and I can speak to large, whatever kind of group in person, spontaneously, without notes. And I get out in nature where I find God really often, because if you and I today are standing outside and we look to the right or to the left in the sky, there is no place where God is not. So let's start there and really seek natural remedies, but also a bigger God in our life, rather than feeling helpless ever again. And thank you. And you can ask me whatever questions.
That's great. I want to go back to the moment when you were in front of the mirror and you had your list, and there was so many dislikes on that list. And so not liking your life, feeling unhappy. And you said that those dislikes were keeping the disease in place. What do you mean by that?
Okay, I don't think you can have that many dislikes in your life and have life working. So the dislikes actually take the if we wanted to take it further, the chemistry in our body, always agitated, always anxious, always on edge, right? And so finding peace within means that, I'll give you an example. If we had a little child, a little baby, and they're crying, and we just kept scolding them for crying, and they just keep crying more, right? So internally, we also are crying. And how are we going to stop that baby from crying is to take them and cradle them in our arms and let them hear our heartbeat and just calm them down, right? And then they're going to have something like this. They're going to go, ah. They're going to take a breath in because they're agitated. So our body's agitated too. And I don't know if I answered your question, but I really think that the dislikes in our life that we keep making excuses for, well, that's about Georgie. Georgie healed, but I can't heal. And life isn't that bad. I can stay in this situation, but we're not living our passion. So we were born with a purpose and passion, and life is passing us by.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely our thoughts would bombard our body. Our thoughts create our emotions.
Absolutely.
So if you keep talking to yourself in a way that's nasty, it's going to perpetuate the cycle. One thing that's coming up for me though, if people have pressed paused and started writing their lists, or if they want to go back and do that exercise, do the list of where are you currently at in your life, and just look at it from, maybe a bit of a spacious perspective.
Absolutely.
Because the tricky part is that our thinking becomes so comfortable, and that's not the word our thinking becomes the norm for us in our head. Familiar. Yeah.
Familiar.
And then therefore sometimes we don't even realize that it's not normal to talk to ourselves in that way, or to feel like crap, or to feel depressed, or we're going to say things like, well, this is life and you can't have it all, or it can't all be good. And examining our beliefs can be helpful, because beliefs always play out.
Right.
If
They
not in the
attract to us.
conscious. Yeah. If I don't know if they attract to us, I'm going to say it differently, because I don't believe in the law of attraction the way that it's currently taught.
Right.
I think that it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy that's immediate. Never mind the law of attraction. Like, some people will want to dive into that, right?
I agree with you.
And how life attracts to us, that's a different conversation. But it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in the immediate moment. Mm-hmm. When you have thinking that's just negative or nasty, it's going to put yourself down. You're going to feel your thinking. So then you're in this cycle. And then it becomes the norm, and then you don't even realize, no, wait a minute. And this is what I believe from my transformative coach perspective, and I'm listening to your story. What I would say that happened to you was that you had an insight that was big enough at that moment in the bathroom that it shifted your consciousness, and it opened up a path to new possibility, and the heat automatically was released, because the insights are so powerful. Of course, insights are going to have an impact on our body.
Right.
Now, I want to say that this is not a formula to heal, because insights, you can't press trigger on demand. But you can be in a conversation such as we are today with Georgie, a conversation that can trigger insights, and then suddenly you have a shift in your thinking and your beliefs, and how you even see your journey to glow, which is the deeper message that I've always had for Journey to Glow is, can you find self-love and compassion and inner peace on your journey to glow? So much so that the whole experience becomes transformative and beautiful, and transformative for your skin as well.
Right. Some years ago, I wrote a song called "What Do I Tell Myself?" So if we had a little ticker tape around here, right, we could see each other's words. What do I tell myself? Would I be proud to tell someone else? Would I be proud of me for the world to see? What do I tell myself? So we tell ourselves a different language than what we show to the world with our fancy clothes and whatever, right? But inside, self-hate. If I have 10 clients and I ask all of them, when you're looking in the mirror, what do you tell yourself? They don't want to look in the mirror. At least 8 of them will say, I hate looking in the mirror. And it's like, well, we need to begin there.
There's something there, obviously. Yeah, there's obviously something there. See, to me, these are all opportunities for higher levels of consciousness, so that we can pierce through the thinking that's creating the illusion, and we can stand in more clarity within ourselves. And that clarity will connect us to our divine healing power.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that, I'm not pretending that I'm God here. That's not what I'm saying. But we know that the body has a capacity to heal itself. And we do need to help a little bit, like cutting out some of the nasties that are just burdening our liver and our system. Anyways, but those are all opportunities for just a shift in our consciousness. You know, if you look in front of the mirror or you look at yourself in the mirror, first of all, you need to realize the dialogue that's going on in your head, because you need to snap out of that. If you don't snap out of the same dialogue, nothing is going to change.
Nothing's going to change. No.
And it's not about changing the dialogue to have better thoughts. That's not what it's about. It's about seeing that the dialogue is creating the feeling, enhance the reality, enhance that stuck reality where things aren't changing and there's no healing and there's no change in the skin, right?
Mm-hmm. So some of this, Carolyn, don't you feel is generational? It just goes back of how we've been taught. And what I found is that I've done a lot of self-nurturing, and I continue to what I call lavishly give to myself for all the years that I neglected myself. But what I find is that I stepped into another reality and was like stepping in a healthy person's body and go, where have I been all my life? Where have I been all my life? Right?
Yeah.
When you drop the shields around your false core beliefs and heal your traumas and look at your own belief system, and would you teach a child what you're telling yourself?
Absolutely. And I think we do carry a lot of stuff from even whether, the women in our family or people that are close to us. I just want to say, though, that after 30 years in the self-help world, and then coming across a new understanding of the human potential,
Right.
that I don't believe we need to be on the self-help personal growth train as much as the self-help world is selling to us.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's if it's appropriate for a person right now to and if it's called for from their inner wisdom, wait a minute, maybe there's something for me to see there, then you will have insight.
Right.
And it will serve you. But it's not a formula for everyone to do this generational work that
yeah.
You know, if
no,
you
I'm not inviting that. It's just that we think sometimes the way my mother thought or my grandmother thought, and just say, no, I want to have my own thoughts. I want to be mindful in the moment and really make my own decisions. And our intuition is 100% accurate once we get in alignment with it, rather than following other voices.
Yeah.
So silent time is really important in my life, of getting silent. And at first I was threatened by silence. I was just like, oh my goodness, I don't know what I thought would happen. But the first silent retreat I went on, I actually had paid for it, got in the driveway and went, I can't do this. And I drove away, and now I can do 5-7 days silent retreats very easy.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that to me is where the magic and the healing can happen, as opposed to working on ourselves because we're not good enough. And
right.
And all those beliefs, I need to change. I have blocked beliefs. And I got off that train a long time ago, because now I just understand how the human potential is unleashed, and how everything is created from the inside out. So it saved me a lot of time when I started to explore this. I talk about it a little bit on some of the coaching sessions on the podcast, and that's more information on my coaching business website. But I like to bring it in the conversation here, because often the conversation in Journey to Glow will turn around self-help and healing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that even that conversation, which is why I guess that's part of my mission again for Journey to Glow, is to advance the healing conversation and to invite people, like you said, to listen to themselves, trust themselves. But back to that silent piece, I have a feeling that it's in the silence and in the space between thoughts that things are really taken care of, that the shifts happen, the answers come.
Absolutely, 100%. 100%. It's amazing if people will just get, like the baby that's crying, right? We just never take time to be still. We have texts and phones and all this noise, right? And when we tune it all out, there's like this other reality. And if you are willing to commit to doing that without being afraid, right? Commit to 15 minutes and then an hour and then days, it's like, there really is
Yeah.
a part of our soul. So I have a saying that our soul is homesick for us to come back home. And we've bought into a whole other way of busyness in life.
So I just want to go back in your timeline a little bit in case people want to dive more into this. So you started to have rosacea, you said, how old were you again?
36.
36. And then it got from the beginning of rosacea till worse. What's the period of time?
About 6 years.
6 years. And then was that the shifting moment for you, because you said that you met so many doctors and then so many holistic doctors and tried so many things and it wasn't working. So for you, the pivotal moment, you think, was that moment where you had an insight in the bathroom about yourself and your life?
Well, that was the beginning of it. But in those 6 years, I went to 6 to 8 specialists a year and far more holistic practitioners, but nobody addressed the emotional component. Nobody, they all looked at it as an isolated case. And so I think that being in this group where they were dealing with emotions, and what was great about it is that, remember, I was so paralyzed that I just sat there in this room, but I watched other people heal in front of me. People that were on medication started doing less. One lady walked in with a cane, and in a week, she did away with her cane. And it was like just sharing their story. So I got to heal a lot through watching them and stepping back and going, nobody up to that moment in my life had addressed what do you feel like, what does it feel to have this disease and be bombarded with not finding answers, right? Just desperately every day trying to figure it out. And I didn't have the web at that time. And what I ask people now is that we go online and we study and we blog and we have all these horrible stories. Well, I've got it worse than you and whatever. Stop doing that. I just really encourage people to stop that dialogue where it just rips you up inside. Just get quiet, come back, find your own answers, love yourself, and go inward. Just what Carolyn's saying, go inward rather than always externally trying to keep the drama going.
Yeah. I think that's going to be a course on Journey to Glow, just because I can hear people saying, well, how do I do that? How do I go inward? And I also want to point to the fact that I find that in the holistic healing world, a lot of people will talk about self-care and got to have self-care, but self-care without presence,
Mm-hmm.
and without, you can sit down and meditate and your mind is going 100 miles an hour. That's not really going to work, right? Like, what we're talking about is to go deeper and to access that place within you that can open up to the space where things can start to shift. So that's going to be an interesting conversation to have, because I haven't found a lot of people talk about that deeper emotional healing. I'm so glad you shared your journey, because in everyone I've interviewed so far, no one has talked about it either. The emotional component and how that can trigger healing. And the other thing I want to highlight was that for everybody listening, just different Journey to Glow stories will resonate with them. To this morning, I was talking to someone who the factor to her acne was only one thing, and it was getting fluoride out of her diet and out of her water. And so she wrote a whole book about that. And I thought, well, could it be that simple? Well, for some people it is, and for some people it's not.
Mm-hmm.
For some people, you're going to have to look inside and start to face some of your quote unquote demons and bring them to the light of consciousness so that they don't create on your behalf without you knowing. You're like a puppet of your subconscious mind that's, manipulating you in your everyday life. So becoming much more conscious of your mind, your thoughts, your emotions. And that's something, Georgie, I don't know if you have a tip for people, because it's not easy for people to hold the space for emotions. Sometimes we can feel like if the emotions just come, we feel that we're going to be drowned in it. So how do you
Right.
guide people through that?
And we react. So one of the things is I think we have a society that we pretend everything's going well. And so I didn't know what I was feeling. So I was numb enough inside from even my lifestyle. I mean, back in the corporate world, right? I just was on automatic, work, sleep, eat. That was my life. And I wasn't money driven, but I was success driven. And if they gave me an assignment, then I did it and I did it well. But give me 3 assignments at once and I'll do that well also. So in order to stay numb, and one of the things I didn't mention here in the interview is layers, right? We talk about the onion. Underneath all those layers, what was driving me to devalue myself at this level where I just worked over the top of any kind of personal need was that going back into my teenage years, I was date raped on my first date at age 14 and never told anybody. So how does that emotionally affect you when now you feel like your whole life has changed, your whole attitude about who you are as being sacred is all gone? You know, it's like it just affected my whole attitude towards myself, like I had a secret and that people could see the secret in me. So the only way to deal with it was that when I found work, that become my addiction. So alcohol and drugs wasn't available, but I could work and I could get praised for it. So this was a way to get some kind of recognition. But it was, Carolyn, it was never enough. No matter what I accomplished, no matter what I got paid, what titles I got, I could never feel it because I was still numb from back here when that emotion really was frozen in me. And the second thing that happened almost back to back is that I sang in choir as a young person, and I had a piano, and I did a lot of solos. And my voice teacher died somewhere when I was 15 or 16 years old. So by 16, I took to work. I went to high school and I took on 2 jobs. So I worked many times till midnight every day. And my parents just thought this was great because here's this child that's making money and knows how to provide for herself, has her own car. But it was really sad. Nobody was noticing what I was doing. I didn't want to feel. And I stopped crying. When he died, I stopped, no, I stopped, I probably stopped crying too, but I stopped singing and invited to sing my stepbrother, not my stepbrother, my adopted brother was a musician. So he'd asked me, and he played organ for a lot of churches. He'd asked me to sing with him, and I had no desire to sing. So I shut that door up until, healing many layers of my life and questioned myself, how come I can't sing? And opening up that whole channel has just been a revelation for me. Again, my body has been my greatest teacher. So this has been a journey of seeing my actions and reactions that we are divine, we are sacred, and to really honor that in our lives and come back to not living through somebody else's life or what they taught us, but really going inside and figuring out, what do I want in life and what is my passion? And am I willing to go after my passion rather than money and know that everything will start working out? Because the more joy I have, the more good comes in my life. I've been self-employed now for 20 years and I don't know where my next money's coming from, but I just trust the process because I'm not gonna worship money and trying to figure it out again and tear myself up inside wanting to know, have I made enough money this week? I'm just not gonna go there. But it's been, healing takes whatever it takes.
Hmm. So my body is my greatest teacher. And then we can say, we can say as well, My skin is my greatest teacher.
Absolutely.
What does my skin want me to know? What does my skin need? What is the message?
Hmm.
What do I need to hear?
Is my skin happy?
Well, if it's not happy, we know it's not happy, and then why? Why is it? What does she want me to know? And I'm curious to, how much we can develop our capacity to hear, to the point where instead of following specific diets, that we can be even more intuitive with what we choose to eat and more intuitive with the supplements.
Hmm.
I just did I just finished a 2 months course on energy medicine, which
Oh,
had
nice.
it had never been on my radar. And then it had never interested me. And then it popped on my radar, and the theme was vitality. And I thought, well, I need more, I can take more vitality. But all that to say, that's from Donna Eden. Do you know Donna Eden?
Yes, I do. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So she teaches us how to self-test with food, and because you can test other people energetically to
Right,
see
right.
what's a match for them.
Physiology, uh-huh.
Yeah. And she talked about that all the time, like really tuning into your body to ask, what does it need? Because again, I think that there are basic principles for eating for a healthy skin, for sure. But
Hmm.
each one of us is so individual, like the bio-individuality needs to be taken into consideration. And again, if you hadn't clicked on the emotional piece, having tried everything that you've ever tried. And I think that's something I really want people to hear, because I hear that a lot from the women in Journey to Glow. They say, they're going to write to me and they're going to say, well, I'm just completely discouraged. I've tried everything and nothing works.
Hmm.
Well, you're missing the most critical component and you can't see it. So you're going to need to get really good at asking the right questions so that you can find that thing that will shift the whole game for you.
Right.
Yeah. So as we wrap up the podcast, the interview, I'd love to hear from you. How would you help and guide people into being able to click on what do they need to see right now in order to make progress on their journey to glow? What would you say?
I think getting honest and taking time for self, getting quiet, um, slowing the mind down. So breathing. So when we're shallow breathing, the mind just rambles and we're not going to find the answer. So getting on a breathing routine where so the body's 80% oxygen and fluid. So we have to ask ourselves, if oxygen flows and fluid flows, then what is pain, right? Is it blocked energy? And am I blocking myself from seeing the truth? So once I start noticing that I really need breath, simple, right? Priceless. We're just shallow breathing. And especially if we're scared or tense or have something, especially with our face. So putting your hand over your navel and breathing in and out and say, am I breathing fully? Like a little child, if we watch them, their stomach just goes up and down because it's natural. And we're not doing that. We get scared and our whole skeletal is tight. And then we live that way, not aware that we can open up. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, you did.
But getting quiet inside and self-nurturing at a new level where I'm important enough. Some people feel selfish, literally, Carolyn, they feel selfish giving to themselves. And I believe that we take care of ourselves first and give other people the overflow, not giving out of exhaustion and calling it love. It's not love. It'll end up being resentment at some point. So overflow of our joy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yes, you've answered it. Slowing down, quiet,
Breathing.
breathing is a great way to get there. Meditation. And yeah, I think presence, being willing to be present in the moment, that's a meditation in itself. Sometimes people think they need to sit down to meditate, but you can be in a meditative state playing with your dogs or playing with your child or walking in nature.
And
But
being in the moment. I love nature, and I have people when it's warm enough to get outside and put their feet on Mother Earth. Just get grounded, and make your meditation, every step, just blessing the earth is a way of just being in the moment. Can you hear the birds, or do you have your cell phone and you're out in nature walking and talking on your cell phone and you're not aware of nature or that little bird that's singing over there for you? So I spent a lot of time at first in nature. I'd spend 3 hours at least in the forest and just go back and lean up against a tree and say, teach me your ways, because my ways definitely did not work.
That's beautiful. I forgot to ask you, where are you?
I'm right outside of Houston, Texas.
Right. Okay. And where did you grow up?
I grew up in Michigan, Upper Michigan.
Okay. I was trying to picture earlier when you were talking about when you were a teenager. I wanted to ask you where you're from.
Yeah, right up by the Canada border.
Yeah. Okay.
Upper Michigan, right.
So where can people find you? What's your website?
My website is my name, GeorgieHolbrook.com. So it's Georgie, and then Holbrook, H like Harold, OLBROOK.com. And all my information is on there.
All your information is there, and your books are on Amazon. It's
and my books are on my website also.
Yeah, I see that. It's on your homepage. And I started with Joyful Holistic Remedies. And the reason why I suggest it to someone who wants to just read another woman's story, I feel that that's just so helpful. Sometimes we don't want advice. We don't want another skin healing modality. We don't want more work. We just want to read someone's journey, what they've been through, and it connects with us. And that's why I'm so glad you wrote.
And to have hope and encouragement. So 6 chapters of Joyful is really my story. And then 10 chapters are self-help of what I did to come out the other side. And one of them is letting go of anger. How do you get anger out of your body? So it's a great book. It's went around the world and it's changed a lot of people's lives, going in 180 degree direction in a new direction.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your time. I just got an idea that popped up, but I'm not going to share it on a recording. I'll share it with you after.
Well, I am totally blessed. I am on a mission to share my story with whoever, because it works. I've proved it over 20 years with other people. So I've tested it on all kinds of different health issues. They work the same, Carolyn. We're just going to get quiet, come back, own our bodies, own the fact that we can heal. And together we're stronger, sharing our stories. So appreciate you. Just really appreciate getting to meet you.
Oh, thank you. Likewise. And for anybody listening on the podcast, go watch the video so you can see how radiant Georgie is, and really like anchor in the possibility, because I know that it can be so noisy out there with, medical doctors that are, God bless them, wanting to help, but they're not helping by closing the door of possibility. And again, I wanted to have Georgie on to show that before and after photo, it is absolutely possible to be completely cured from rosacea. So imagine what else is possible.
Right.
So anybody giving hope, just come and watch this video, look at the photos, go read Georgie's website, and open up your mind to something new. And if anybody's listening and they're having resistance, that they think that this is not possible, the resistance is causing the sabotaging of your success. So anytime there's any resistance, that could be a whole podcast episode on resistance, because resistance is closing the door to what is possible. So thank you so much, Georgie, for showing us what is possible, for doing your work, and being this luminous goddess.
Oh, I wanted to add, art is also a part of it. And so the lady's face behind me, this was a white piece of silk, and I designed it with French dye, liquid dye. But I wanted to do a face. This is a poncho. She's been in a couple of really major style shows here in Houston. But I wanted to do a face to represent my beautiful face. And you'll see she's surrounded with flowers. So we just want to praise our faith for healing, right?
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you. It's beautiful.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Thank you, Georgie.
All right. Blessings to you.